Okay, before we get to drawing out our skeleton, just a couple small little things you might want to do is it's a good idea to go ahead and name your layers for your character. Certainly you can do this in layout, but I just find that it's a good thing to go ahead and take care of this now, so that once we get to layout, when we select a layer, we know exactly which part of the character we're dealing with. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up layer settings for this, and I'm going to call this zombie mesh. Okay, and I'm going to move to the next layer, bring up layer settings again, and I believe this is the right eye, and let's see, is that correct? Yeah, and then the left eye. Okay, one other thing, this is just a thing that I do, which it's another one of those workflow tips that helps speed me up. I use context menus quite a bit in Lightwave, and you can access those by pressing Control-Shift, then your left, middle, and right mouse button. And I have mine set up so that a lot of the plugins that I use are on the right mouse button. Most things, file, associated with file, and just basic Mahler functions in the left one. And in the middle is the one that really comes in handy, which is I have the action centers mapped into the top part here, so I can quickly, without really having to press keys or having to press, what is this, the function keys, I can just do it wherever my hands are, and most often I switch between mouse and selection, and so you'll see me doing that pretty often. Should you want to do something like that, you can always press let's see, it's Alt F10, which will bring up your configure menus, which will allow you to go in here and customize your menus however you want. I'm not going to go into that now, but it's pretty straightforward. I think you'll be able to figure it out, no problem at all. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about how we're going to handle our skeleton. If you've ever done any kind of character rigging before or followed other tutorials, you will know that there are many ways to execute skeletons in characters. Some are really clever, and some are very simple and straightforward. It all kind of comes down to what do you want the character to do when you're animating. What kind of motion do you think the character is going to have, and how does that motion play into the character's personality? How specifically is that going to affect establishing weight when you're animating? All these kinds of factors lead up to how you might draw out your skeleton. And certainly there are some skeletons which are extremely advanced and take quite a bit of time to develop, sometimes days, weeks, or even months to really get perfected. We're not going to go that deep into it. Certainly if there's time, I'm going to try to cover some advanced parts of rigging, including expressions that you might want to try out, maybe some different things you could utilize in layout to speed up workflow in animating. But as always, there's a trade-off. And the trade-off is that the more junk you put in your skeleton and your rig, the more likely it is that one, it's going to take you a long time to get things ironed out, unless you are just really super fast and have done it a million times. And the other thing is that the more controls you put in, in terms of multiple IK chains, things like that, the more likely it is you're going to end up fighting your rig when you're animating. And generally you don't want that. When you're animating, you don't want to have to think about the tools so much that you're using, and you just want to focus on the task at hand. And certainly, if you're fighting your rig for control over how your limbs are placed and how easy it is to get there, you've kind of undermined your efforts. So with that being said, the skeleton that we're going to create for Zombie here is going to kind of be a hybrid. There may be a few advanced controls, but for the most part, he's going to be pretty simple. But I am going to show you a few things that you can do, which will, in the long run, save you some headaches in terms of setup. There are a few things in Lightwave that I found in character rigging that can be very frustrating. Especially when you don't have much experience with it. You don't really understand why certain things happen when you're setting up your character. Why is this bone snapped to this position, or why does its rotation change and I can't move it back to the way it was? And you waste half an hour or whatever, and you have to go do it all over again. Well, I'm going to show you a few things that you can do that hopefully are going to help you avoid those kinds of situations, specifically with gimbal lock and things of that nature. Okay, so let's go ahead and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select an empty layer, and I'm going to put my character mesh in the background, and I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead into this top viewport here. I'm going to bring up my skeleton skeleton tool, which I have mapped to F8. And in the top viewport, I'm going to go ahead and draw out a bone, starting from the back of the character and going to about the middle. Okay, now you'll see that that bone has actually been placed here near the origin, and I'm going to go ahead and select it and move it up a little bit to about where I was judging the center of my hips were going to be. Let's move that down a little bit. Grab my drag tool, drag that in, and this is going to be the pelvis of our character. And you'll notice that I drew that skeleton in the top viewport, and there's a good reason for that. And the reason is that for certain types of bones that are going to be parallel to your ground plane, you do generally want to go ahead and try and draw those in the top viewport, and that kind of goes into how the bone, once you convert the skeleton to a bone, how its orientation, its rotation handles are oriented in layout. And if you draw them in the top viewport, you'll find often that they will be oriented the way that you want them to, and you don't actually have to go in and use the edit skeletons command and change the little bank handles. So that is our pelvis. Next, we're going to we'll stay in that viewport. Let me get my skeleton tool again, and let's draw out the spine. Okay, I'm going to place a bone here. Actually, let me undo that. Skeleton. Place a bone here, 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 and here. Move that down a little bit. And so I drew out 4 bones here, and you'll notice here that in this last bone, I'm trying to keep the base of that last bone pretty much oriented or placed close to where the center of the hand is. And down here, actually, I'll need to go ahead and select these 2 points, and I'm going to hit, for me, is Control W, which is weld. So I'm going to weld those 2 points together. So that's our spine. Next, let's go ahead and do our neck. Just going to be here. Okay, and then I'm going to draw another one for the head. I'm going to draw that one straight up like that. Let me see if we have, okay, 1 point there. That's good. I'm going to select both of these points here for the head, and I'm going to hit my stretch tool, and actually let me change the action center to selection, and I'm just going to drag that out so that these points are lined up exactly. Okay, and there is our pelvis, spine, neck, and head.